Mike Locksley has to have an elite game plan against USC.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day, and also video creator on InsideBlackandGold.net. Make sure you guys go over to Inside Black and Gold for all your latest Terps news. And today's episode is brought to you by the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. I think Mike Locksley better and has to have an elite type of game plan for the Terps to not only win against USC, but for us to feel any type of good about Mike Locksley, for us to feel any type of let's say get over some of the past things that have happened these last couple of weeks for Maryland football. Coach Locksley better come out and put something together against USC where we can somewhat forget about some of these past games that we have lost, some of these embarrassing performances that have continued to build up. I think that he has to have a really good game plan against USC for us to start forgetting about the 37-10 loss to Northwestern that we just faced coming off the bye week to a team that we were 10-point favorites to at home, and we made them look like they were Georgia football or Texas football or Ohio State or Oregon football. And then also losing by 14 to Indiana, a team that I didn't even think was that much better than us. I think that Mike Locksley has to make up for that against USC and prove to us that he can rebound, that he's still a good coach. I think a lot of people in my comment sections have been saying, fire Mike Locksley. Mike Locksley should go. Mike Locksley is not the answer. Mike Locksley is not going to get us to where we need to be. And I'm not quite saying that with Mike Locksley. I'm not there because I think he's put together a really good couple of years. But I do believe that Mike Locksley this year has been really bad. And I think it's time finally for him to have a good game. It almost feels like we're due for one. It feels like he has to have a good game plan against USC, right? He just put it together a horrible one after a whole entire bye week against Northwestern. Indiana didn't look good. Michigan State a couple weeks ago, we lost. And so I'm saying he better put together a good game plan. But the biggest part is that for the Terps to have any chance to beat USC, they have to have a good game plan for Mike Locksley. Because clearly, and their whole entire staff, it's not Coach Locksley, it's Coach Gaddis, it's Coach Williams. We have to figure out how to be a better team in basically every single category you look at. But we're a team that isn't going to win on talent, and that's just the way it is. I don't know if anybody thought that we were that type of team who's listening to this, but Maryland football isn't that type of team. They're not. We don't have those types of guys. We don't have a bunch of 5-star, 4-star guys that we can just throw out there, run a basic scheme, and they're going to win based on just out-talenting guys. Sure, there are teams that we can do that to. For example, we did that some this season to a team like UConn. You can out-talent. Who else did we play? Villanova. You can out-talent them on the football field. Can't do that on the basketball court. Same with UConn, even more so with UConn. But on the football field, you can just out-talent those guys. But my point is when we get to the Big Ten games, when we get to games like teams that seem like they're somewhat even with us, I think it's fair to say that Northwestern, you would probably say they're about an even team as us at this point. They hadn't looked that good before the game against us, and we made them look really good. Indiana, somewhat even. I feel like Michigan State, somewhat even in terms of talent. And you have to go into those games and come in with a really top-end game plan, or you're not going to win. At least a good game plan. You can't have a bad game plan, or you're just not going to have a chance because guys aren't going to be positioned to win. Guys aren't going to be in the right spots. Our offensive line isn't going to play well, and that's going to lead to Billy Edwards getting hit, and our secondary is going to get torched. Our defensive line never has a chance, and all these different things about your football team. If the coaches don't run the right type of system, don't put you in the right spots, don't have a good game plan, don't establish a good enough scouting report, all those different things that go into it, and you're going to lose games. And you can lose by 27 to Northwestern, or you can lose by 3 like you did against Michigan State, where it feels like a game where you do a lot of things right, but there's still some small things in the game plan that aren't good enough, like your secondary against Michigan State. Then you're not going to win the game. And my point is against USC, a team that I think we can agree on. I know they've lost some game. I know technically their Big Ten record isn't that good. I know all those things. But a team like USC has more talent than us. They just have. They've recruited a little bit more big time. It's USC with Lincoln Riley. They're getting a little bit more established types of recruits and those different things. And I'm not saying they're so much better than us, but I would say they have a little bit more talent. And so for Coach Locksley to give us a chance this weekend against USC, 4 o'clock on Saturday, in a game where the line honestly isn't as much as I thought it would be. We're 7-point underdogs. 7-point underdogs, yeah, it's not like, oh, like we're only 3-point underdogs. It's basically like an even type of game. 7-point underdogs, like teams win as 7-point underdogs all the time. Like that, I mean, us beating USC would definitely be considered an upset, but just based off the Vegas numbers, and I expect that number to go up. Expect that number to go up to 8, 9, expect it to go up. But for us to win a game where we are underdogs, they do have more talent than us, even though it's only a 7-point spread right now. Expect that to go up. So if you're a bettor and you want to bet that, then go ahead and get on that. But I think that when you look at it, you got to come out with a really good game plan. Because I think USC, they're I don't know the exact word to use. They're kind of a perplexing team this year. They're a weird team for sure. Because you could argue right now that they're unranked right now, but they're so close to being undefeated and probably being a top 10 team in the country. Like they're like a couple plays short of being a top 10 team in the country. Michigan, they lost by 3, a game that you could argue that they started off horribly and that they could have won. They lost to Minnesota, which was a really weird loss. And then last weekend, they lost to Penn State. But they've beaten LSU, who's ranked 8th in the country. They beat Wisconsin by 17, 21-38. They should have beaten Penn State last week. And this is a good team. I don't think I have to tell any of you guys that this is a good team. And they've got some good players. And they can score the ball. We know Lincoln Riley teams. And another reason I say Mike Locksley is going to have a really good game plan is because you're facing maybe the best offensive mind in all of college football. Maybe that hasn't amounted to wins at USC. Maybe he hasn't quite gotten to where he probably has wanted to be in that program with that program. But there's a reason why. There's a ton of Heisman winners that have worked with Lincoln Riley because he's really good offensive coach and he really knows how to put his players in positions to get a lot of yardage, to score a lot of points. And so Coach Locksley is going to have to, and Coach Williams are going to have really good defensive game plans because I think that their quarterback is a good player as well. I think Miller Moss, their quarterback, he's had a weird kind of stretch, didn't play great against Minnesota. I thought played solid against Penn State, but I think that Miller Moss is a guy that you're going to have a really good game plan if you're going to want to stop that USC team. And same thing goes on the offensive side of things. I'm not saying USC has a juggernaut on defense, but our offense hasn't looked that great either against some mid-tier defenses like a Northwestern last week. I think Northwestern's defense is better than a lot of people think, but it ain't that good. And so for a team, the USC, that's coming off of losing games, losing to Michigan a couple weeks ago, and then losing 2 straight to Penn State and Minnesota, If you think that Lincoln Riley isn't going to have some things cooked up against the Maryland defense and the Maryland secondary that has struggled, think again, because he's going to scheme up some things. And if Maryland doesn't come up with a really good game plan and Mike Locksley doesn't have a really good game plan, they're going to get crushed, and people are going to continue to question Mike Locksley as the head coach for the Maryland football team. So Maryland's really going to have to turn up the game plan. They're going to have to figure things out and how to get things going on both sides of the football against a USC team in Lincoln Riley that we have seen has some really good schemes. And we know that they can definitely expose a Maryland secondary that isn't good. So Mike Locksley, Coach Williams, Coach Gaddis, you're going to have to game plan the right way against a team that is, quite frankly, more talented than you. Maryland football should go ahead and play their freshmen and younger players a lot for the rest of the season. I'll tell you about that after this ad from the Gametime app. Have you ever wanted to go to a game at the last minute like a Maryland Terrapins game, but finding tickets is hard? I've been there before. Buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guaranteed, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of an event and even an hour after it starts. It's a place to find last-minute seats and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account or redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I think Maryland football, all their freshmen, all the young guys, sophomores, whatever it may be, all those different guys that are ready to play, feel like they have the ability to play. If you think that as a coaching staff, there's a guy that is good enough to play right now, but you might want to save him, you might not want to put him out there yet, forget that. I think you have to, if you're Maryland football, play the young guys. I think that this year is one of those years where we're close to kind of saying you kind of just got to scrap it. And I don't want to say it yet, but a bowl game is not likely anymore, and a bowl game certainly doesn't look good anymore. And so to me, it's like, yeah, you want to win games, but sports is about the future and about every single sport you play. Everyone's always thinking about the current. Everyone's always thinking about what is going on now. And you don't want to get too far ahead of yourselves. But when you look at college, when you look at professional sports, coaches, GMs, all those different people, whatever sport it is, they're always thinking about their future and getting things going in the future. And we see it in the NFL, and you see it in college football. It's just not as obvious. But when you start losing games, you start doing things differently. You might start getting ready for next year. Teams might start tanking and start trying to get the number one pick. In college football, it's a little bit different. You might start just playing younger guys that maybe they're not quite ready to play at an elite level, but they're talented. And if they get on the field, they're going to feel better about your program and wanting to stay. And you might not get as many guys in the portal. And they also can develop a lot for guys that you're going to need for next year. And I think it's fair to say that Maryland football is getting into territory where it's like, what's the direction of this year? And you always want to have a direction. You don't want to just be playing to play. And if we lost, let's say we lost this week to USC and we lost next week to Minnesota, or in 2 weeks against Minnesota, and we're looking at a team that's not going to be bowl eligible, it seems like they don't have a lot to play for. I would be really excited to see all the young guys play, because I think that can really benefit us as a program, seeing those guys develop, seeing where a lot of those guys are at, so their first game experience isn't next year when we maybe need them. I'm in the component of play those young guys. And Coach Locksley does do a good job, even though I've been kind of hypocritical about this, and I don't really love it all the times. He does do a good job of playing a lot of different players. I'm usually on the wavelength where I'm like, in the big games, I want to see two corners play, and I want to see maybe two or three middle linebackers play, and defensive line you can rotate those guys, but I don't want to see a bunch of different guys in the corner room. I don't want to see 4 or 5 corners. But if Maryland continues this way, I'm fine with seeing a bunch of different players. I'm fine with seeing some of the young guys. And Braden Lee is injured, got surgery, and he's going to be hurt. He's the guy I was going to be in favor of starting, but a guy like Kevin Humes, who's struggled at times when he's been in, I don't mind seeing him start. And if he struggles, to be honest, it's not that I don't care, but I think that could be good for him. Struggling early on might be the best thing for a lot of these guys. A guy like Judah Jenkins in the secondary, I think he's another guy that I wouldn't mind just seeing more of, seeing what they can develop as. Trey Reddick, Kiari James, Keyshawn Flower, all those young linebackers, I wouldn't mind. Michael Harris is a sophomore. We've seen him a lot. I wouldn't mind seeing a lot of those different guys. And that's just on the defensive side of things. On the offensive side of things, there's also guys that I really wouldn't mind seeing. Even some of these guys up front, I think you can play them a little bit. Like a guy like Ryan Howerton, Terez Davis, Michael Hershey. I think those are all guys that could play, and that having them in the game wouldn't really hurt you. And so I do think that you want to have a direction as a team, and that it's important to go a specific way, and that you don't just want to be playing to play. But I think playing the young guys has to be something we consider. Even this weekend against USC, I know it's a lot of hype in this game, and I know Mike Locksley might think this is the upset game. This is where Terps can win. I said it before the season; it's an upset spot. USC, they're a good team. They're not as good as I may have thought they would be. They're on the road. Their quarterback has been a little bit shaky, even though I still think he's a really good player overall. And they just haven't been playing very well, and they've lost games that they should have won. You could argue we've been the same way. But I do think that still getting some of these younger guys in the game doesn't hurt us, doesn't kill us at all. And I think that could be the way to go for the Terps, and I think that could be the smart play to do things, because you don't want to get to the end of the year and a lot of guys are leaving and they say, well, we just didn't really get a chance to prove ourselves, and we felt like we could play this year because your team wasn't playing that well, and we thought we should get the opportunity to play, or different things like that. Like, you don't want the young guys coming to you at the end of the year and saying that. I know that's usually not exactly like that, but I'm telling you, these guys will be less inclined to transfer if you give them minutes early on and let them develop, see what they look like. There's usually going to be a surprise or two that play at a higher level than you expect. Guys that are game type of players. Maybe they're not practice guys where they're going to look great in practice, but they're going to look really good in games. You just don't know with a lot of those guys, and you don't want to let one of those slip away into the portal, one of those freshmen that came from a really solid class that you let get away. You just don't want to do those things. Maryland Basketball Media Day, what Kevin Willard was saying, what are some of the key points? I'll give you a quick little preview of that after this ad from FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-plays, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Guys, make sure you guys go over to FanDuel if you want to bet on the MLB or the NBA season is going to be coming back soon. And, of course, college football, the NFL, whatever you want to do. Like I mentioned, Maryland 7-point underdogs to USC. If you think Maryland can win the game, you can bet that over on FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com. So Maryland basketball had a little media day, and there was some interesting things that I do want to talk about. One thing was Queen and Reese talking about them playing together. And Kevin Willard clearly is so high on Derek Queen. I talked about it a little bit yesterday, but he said Derek Queen is a generational type of prospect. So the hype for Derek Queen is out of this world. It is so high. It might not be even fair how high it is, but I think he can live up to it. I do. And Kevin Willard said if I was an NBA GM, I would draft him in a heartbeat. He's probably a once-in-a-lifetime generational talent. So clearly, Derek Queen has looked like he's supposed to look like so far this year for the Terps. Like he's looked like an elite type of guy. He's looked like one of the best players in that class, like a 5-star that he's supposed to be, which is pretty expected, a lot of it. But the fact that he's really probably looking like our best player so far is something that is important and something at media day that after reading everything that I clearly took away, and that Reese and Derek Queen together is going to be a special type of duo that I think could really make a huge impact in the Big Ten and be the best duo in the Big Ten. And of course, the transfers are something that maybe is the biggest storyline outside of Queen. And it does sound like Gillespie and Selton Miguel are going to start. A lot of me thought, okay, Selton was a 6th man of the year at his old conference, and it could make sense that potentially him coming back off the bench, because that's what he's been good at in the AAC conference, the American Athletic Conference. He's been the 6th man of the year, even though he was still second on his team in minutes and averaging 14.7 per game. But it sounds like he's too good not to start. And Kevin Willard talked about him being a guy that can get his own shot, which is really important. I think we have more guys that can just get their own shot this year, which is something that we didn't have last year. We had one guy that could really get his own shot in Jameer Young. And so I think that having another guy, him and Jacoby Gillespie is expected to start the one, having two guys at the guard position that can get their own shot. And then you have Derek Queen, Julian Reese, guys that can get their own shot. And then Deshaun Harris-Smith, I guess, is considered to start as well. We'll see how he's developed. Rodney Rice, it sounds like, could be a really good player off the bench. I'm so really, really high on Rodney Rice. And so I do think that he's a guy that could make a huge impact. But I think that he will come off the bench, but I do think he's a guy that will be part of a huge part of the game plan. So I really do believe that that Rodney Rice is going to be good. And then it sounds like that Deshaun Harris-Smith has also improved his shot, which is something else that everyone has kind of been looking at, and that everybody kind of wants, and thinks that we can really take ourselves at the next level. Harris-Smith said, "I feel like everybody wants to see my shooting improve. I've been with Coach Willard every morning at 8 a.m., and he's been helping me with my shot, just critiquing a few things." So I think that he's definitely gotten better. Just shot 20% last year from 3. Wasn't good enough at all. But I think if he gets a shot going, this team is going to be scary. And that's going to be important, because I think last year Deshaun Harris-Smith got the benefit of the doubt because he was a freshman, but we also didn't have a ton of guys that could really play. And so this year there's more guys off the bench that can play at a high level. So if he's not shooting the ball well, and he doesn't improve, well, there's other guys. And so I don't think it's like a must for him to play at a high level, but he has all the tools in the world to be a really good player for Maryland basketball. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked on Terps.